Welcome everybody. We're going to just plunge straight in and what really is coaching. All right. We decided that, you've had a lot of webinars, panels even, and people are just, talking to you, giving you tips. And we're also starting to try to increase the awareness of the usefulness of parent coaching. Yeah. But many parents still don't really know what's in store. Why do they need parent coaching? They're trying to look for a lot of things for your child to attend, intervention, therapy, and all of that. So today is really a taster, and that's why we actually asked you in advance for the questions that you have, okay, some issues that you're struggling with pertaining to your child. So just like Mundik mentioned earlier, and I know some are still entering, so we might repeat things a few times because people are entering. If you see that your question is highlighted as the choice question for us to discuss today, please feel free to unmute yourself or even to contribute to the conversation in the chat. Unmuting would be the best because then there will be no delay in us hearing you because it's a taster. So you're not in our presence. We're not going to do it like case study style. So there will be many variables that we are not so sure about. So if you don't mind the confidentiality part and you're willing to share, which, I would encourage you because in the community, the more transparent we are, the more we'll learn from one another. Please feel free to add in as we go along. But before we jump into the questions, we're going to, I want to bring you through these two slides. Okay, so I would like you to take out your mobile phones and take a picture of this parent-child inventory. Okay, it's called a parent-child inventory because it's done by you, but it's with regards to your child. And it doesn't matter if your child is still a child or a teenager or even a young adult, this will still apply. So the bars that you see are empty. Okay, and I want you, after you've taken a picture on your phone, just to turn on the edit mode in your album and just use your finger to indicate what level do you think they are for each of the factors listed there. Okay, so for impulsivity, is your child, score them from 0 to 10, right? If you find that your child is the dreamer type, really actually a little bit slow in processing and they don't really, not very impulsive at all, then you can put a 0. Or maybe a 1. For those of you who find that your children are very quickly triggered, you might be putting an 8 or 9 or a 10. Yeah. Emotional regulation as a second factor. Again, how do you see them managing this? I want you to score it as well. The third one, social communication deficit. Yeah. Task initiation. I hope that you are doing this. I see some of you like no action. Take a photo on your mobile because it's very helpful, and take 2 so that you have a blank one and then you can edit on one. Okay, then you can keep your blank one because you might be able to go through it again in a few weeks time and you find that actually things might change because as we journey with our children and we observe different things, we'll have different understanding of them, right? The fourth thing there is task initiation. Sorry, the word is supposed to be initiation, not invitation. Yeah, so how quick are they to initiate what they need to do? Usually a more boring activity such as homework or studying, yeah, or going for tuition, something they're not that interested in, okay, because if you score them task initiation on something they like using the iPad or turning on the, Netflix, obviously their initiation will be very fast. Okay, if you don't mind, don't annotate on the screen itself, just do it on your own mobile device, right? And then the last one, it's not so much about them, but about your relationship with them, the parent and child relationship. Where would you score that? Okay, it is all confidential. I'm not going to ask any of you to show it to me. So I just want you to score because this is a basis of how we would need to start getting to know you if you were to come for a one-to-one coaching session. All right. Obviously, in one session, we can't ask 100%, but we try our best to ask in different ways to understand what is the profile of your child with regards to all of this. And I want you to know that every single one of you here, all 86 of you, including the panelists, if we were to score our children, I believe not one of our children are going, not two of our children, are going to be exactly the same in score. Yeah, so if you look at this graph as a profile of your child, it shows how unique they are and how important it is for us to customize all our interventions, our understanding, right, in a way that really suits your child. So you may come for many, many talks, you may read a lot of books about ADHD, but if you don't come to someone to customize the information to you, you might be going in a slightly different direction and actually miss something that you may want to be focusing on instead. Okay. Thank you for someone who was scoring on the screen. Yeah, we can actually all see your score. Maybe we should disallow annotations if the admin can do that, but otherwise you can just delete it. I'm going to scroll to the next slide, okay, and I want you to take another picture. Okay, so hold on. Yeah, can someone else do it because I can't find the annotation at the moment. All right, and I want you to fill this in as well. Just use your finger and scribble. As I said, if you like a nice clean copy, just take 2 photographs and then edit on one, the other one you can keep. All right, I want you to write down 2 strengths of your child. It could be anything, any strengths that you can observe, that you feel proud, that you feel that, you know, it's really something special. It doesn't need to be observed by anyone else. It doesn't need to be affirmed by school. It's just your observation of what are the strengths of the child. Okay, and I want you to take some time to write this down. Don't tell me your child has no strengths, okay? So I want you to pause a while to really write this down. Okay, and I'm actually going to be silent for 1 minute because I want you to think about that. Okay, I'm actually going to time myself, and then I'll start to tell you about what is on the right side of the same, this whole thing here. Okay. Just 2 strengths that your child has. Okay, again, this is confidential to you. I'm not asking you to unmute to share with everybody, but this is a process that coaching will help to bring you through as well.
In fact, just to jump in with what Tina has said,
Sure,
yeah, please be as honest as possible with your own scoring, because that will really, really help as we work with you. May it be today's seminar, or may it be a one-to-one coaching, you know, in future. I would say the more honest you are with your answers, the easier it is for us to then work towards a goal together. Yeah. So please, yeah, try to do this as much as possible.
Thanks, Charlene. Yeah. Okay, 1 minute has passed. Now I would like you also to circle which square you think you fall into. And these quadrants are describing parenting styles. Okay. Where is the, sorry, yeah, okay. The top axis, right, the purple axis is actually represents control and dominance. Okay, and the orange axis represents relationship. Okay, love, care, that kind of thing, the soft parts of it, right? So if you are very high on control, low on relationship, you will be like the authoritarian boss. Okay, giving orders, just do it, keep quiet, shut up, you know, just get it done. Okay. However, if you are very low on control, but very high in relationship, you will end up being very permissive. Everything can, you know, okay, get frustrated, but everything allow. Okay, so that's the giving in person. Yeah. Then if you are low on control, but also low on relationship, you will be called an uninvolved parent. Right? In fact, the other word that's often used is neglectful. Okay, that doesn't sound very nice, but there are some parents who may be so involved in so many other things, you almost want your child to be automatic lah. Yeah, to just do everything and to just thrive and grow like a plant without you even watering. Yeah. So we probably have very few here. That's why you are even here today, because you have some level of commitment to your child. Okay. Then of course, the more balanced one is where you're high in relationship, but also high in appropriate amount of control, in a healthy amount of relationship and control. Okay, and that will be the balanced, friendly boss. Okay, giving choices within limits. So just circle or put a tick on which one you think you are. All right, and this is also very important for when you go for a coaching session and when we cover some of the questions later. Depending on your parenting style, you will also receive the information that we're sharing with you differently, and it will also affect how we want to coach you in understanding what your choices and your decisions are. Right, so this is something that we wanted to bring you through, just these 2 slides. Again, I said, you do not have to share it with us. We're not asking you to post it anywhere, but it's for your own understanding. And we will refer to it back as we go along today as well. Okay, so just keep this on hand. beside you, and I'm going to hand over the time to Charlene, because we will be going through 3 main questions today. There will be 15 minutes where we will be giving you a taster of what it's like to be answering the question if we actually had a parent in front of us, okay, and the things that we'll be going through, the thought process in terms of how we are thinking through the question. And then there will be 5 minutes Q&A after each of the questions. Okay, so we'll do this 3 times. Yeah, and the first question will be tackled by Charlene. Over to you, Charlene.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, I would need some help here because I can't move the screen for some reason. Okay, I've got it. Okay, thank you very much. Oops, my bad. Okay, so let's look at gadget usage and control, because this is one of the first questions, or I would say this is the question that everybody is dying to ask. Okay, so one question we had received was about gadget management. Okay, so the child cannot focus back and forth, okay, in a sense where they have started on a game or have started using a gadget, and then after that they cannot go back to what they were supposed to do during the pre-agreed duration. And the other question that we also had was how to avoid screen addiction. Okay, so if it's your question here, do let us know, and if you want to add on. Okay, so the first thing I would start with really is, you know, like what Tina had previously said, we want to start from a baseline, and we need to then understand your child. Okay, and it's for you also to understand your child, and that is also very important. So what is actually socially acceptable right now? Okay, there is peer influence. Now, when your child goes to school, the first thing they'll talk about is, have you, played the latest game? Have you done this? Have you, do you have an iPad, And they would feel a little bit left out if they're like, huh, what are you talking about? What game is this? Like Roblox for the younger kids is like, wow, everybody's on it, right? But if your child doesn't even know what it is, will they feel left out? What would you do if you were in their shoes? So it's something that you need to understand as well. The other is really to connect with your child through their world, right? So that, in school, this is what they do. They're going to talk about, video games. They're going to talk about the latest music. They're going to talk about, even I would say even the latest TV programs, okay? And if your child doesn't know what all these are, can you imagine how ostracized the poor child would be? So again, it is what is socially acceptable. The next thing really is children learn by example. So you cannot tell your child that, hey, don't spend so much time on the computer, don't spend so much time on a handphone, when you are actually using the handphone most of the time, okay? I remember, well, this is for personal experience as well. I remember telling the kids saying that, hey, we're not going to allow handphones at the dinner table from now onwards. Okay, and the moment I said that, there was an urgent call that came in, and both my kids kind of looked at me and said, I thought you just said that we were not allowing handphones at the dinner table. What happened? So the next thing I knew, the kids also took out their handphone, right? So you're losing control there because they see you by example, and that's not what you want to do. So I had to restart this whole thing again. And what I'm saying also is that it doesn't mean that when you lose control, you don't gain back the control, because you can through certain ways as well, okay? So remember always that as parents, we are the role models and our kids look up to us. So what we do, what we say, and how we behave, they pick it up, and they pick it up faster than you can ever imagine. And even correspondence, I would say communication between husband and wife, they will pick it up faster than you even think they heard, okay? Now, next thing, of course, is really child-centered conversations. Now, as parents, okay, and as Asian parents, I'm not sure about you, I'm a tiger mom, and I sometimes get guilty of saying, I said this, don't question me, just follow. Okay, I don't know how many of you have said that, but it happens, right? But we need really to understand why. For example, if we need to implement the limitation of gadget usage, which we are going to, right? Okay, first of all, we need to watch our tone of voice. How are we talking to our child? If, like what I said, you know, like a tiger mom might go, hey, cannot, you have to stop this usage. I only give you 45 minutes to use this, and so on and so forth. That child's probably not going to cooperate with you because, you know, they're not going to be happy, right? You don't understand why, you don't understand, you know, the reasons, your reasons for doing it. However, if we took the approach of, okay, I noticed that your schoolwork has been lagging behind, you know, and I think part of it is because you spend too much time on the computer. You know, maybe you may want to cut down on this time. And before I tell you how much time you can spend on the computer, why don't we work out a solution? You know, how much time do you think you need on the computer? Now, my daughter tells me 45 minutes is very little. So she argues it by the hour, okay? And the truth is, I still leave it at 45 minutes, but I would tell her the alarm will ring at 45 minutes, but you will end your game once the alarm rings, okay? So basically, she still has that time frame, you know, to, and she knows that she has to get off the game really soon, okay? So the important thing really is also is to celebrate the small wins with them. For example, initially when you're going to, you know, implement cutting down the hours, the truth is they're not going to change immediately because they're changing a habit, right? But if you notice that the alarm rings, okay, and they actually get off, you know, the computer within, let's say they finish the game within the next 10 minutes or so, celebrate it with them, compliment them. Oh, okay, I noticed that you did this. And I think that's wonderful. And you should really keep it up. You know, I'm really proud of you. And there's nothing wrong really, you know, complimenting and affirming our kids in their behavior because that is actually what they want to know. Okay? Most of the time, to be very honest, they don't know that they're doing something right. And they feel that they do something right and yet they're not even being acknowledged for it, then it becomes even more difficult for them to follow something later on, okay, or to do something later on. Okay. So let's look at, you know, how we're going to manage this when we have a child below 12 years old. So like what I said, it's really a child-centered approach that we're using when we're talking about approaching a child below 12. Now, at the end of the day is we know that routine works for every single child. And it's even more so for an ADHD child, okay? Without a routine, they actually have no idea what's going on and they wouldn't know how to operate their time because remember, they have no sense of time, okay? So to do that, we need to then as parents be... Oops, okay, it seemed as though somebody muted me. Okay, so okay, in terms of routine, okay, it is important that as parents, we need to then be involved in setting their routine, especially as a primary school child, okay? So we need to then put together the timetable, designate time for homework, for exercise, for sleep, and so on and so forth. If they play an instrument, you need to dedicate time to that as well. Okay, if you have tuition and so on. But of course, okay, I'm not one to advocate tuition for everything. So I'm the worst person to talk to on that, okay? I believe in free time for the child, okay? Now, next thing is agree on the time frame to use for the gadgets for school nights and non-school nights. Okay, this is important because the child will then know that they get a little bit more perk, okay, on non-school nights. And they may work even harder at keeping their time frame during the school nights. Now, the truth is, I also work with consequences and rewards. So for example, on a school night, if my child actually goes beyond the allocated time frame, what happens, and we have agreed on this, is that we will then take away the additional time that she's supposed to have, okay, for non-school nights. And let me tell you, just once she is punished on this, okay, never again did she cross that time frame, okay? So sometimes it's for us to be firm and keep to our guts when it comes to this, okay? Of course, like I did mention, rewards, Okay, that is also very, very important. So for example, in a week, if she has kept to all that she's supposed to do, keeping to the time frame, keeping to her chores and so on and so forth, she gets additional rewards. Let's say, for example, going for ice cream at a favorite place or, you know, something like that that she picks. So again, she leads this entire reward system as well. Having said that, it is a little bit different, okay, when it comes to a secondary school child. Okay, because secondary school and above, the truth is we're managing a whole different ball game when it comes to teens. And I would say that I would use the empowerment approach, meaning that you want to communicate with them. You want to treat them like adults by saying that they own this entire system, right? And what we want to focus on really is to tell them that, hey, you need to have a healthy lifestyle, and, you know, mom and dad are worried about your well-being because now, you know, you have more subjects to do, you know, you're preparing for this and you're preparing for that, and you are also a growing child. So therefore, we want to focus on this. So make them feel that they are the ones that we are focused on. Okay, understand the requirement for gadgets. Now, the truth really is that in secondary school, in poly, there is a high usage for gadgets. They do their homework, okay, on the computer. They submit assignments, they do their research, so they cannot get off the computer. And that is, you know, the expected. So this is real, this is baseline, okay? But we, again, need to monitor, okay, how much time they spend, okay? And to get them off the screen, because it's very easy for us to say, don't spend so much time in front of your computer, you need to relax your eyes, blah, 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 okay? And I think we're all guilty of that, isn't it? You know, but what we need to do then is encourage them to be involved in other activities. For example, if your child is very much of an introvert, okay, go for a walk with him or her, you know, do other things with him or her, okay? And the most important, which our teens do not get enough of, is adequate sleep. Talk to them about sleep. Okay, that is important for them to grow. That is important for them to stay focused, especially for ADHDers. Okay, and most importantly, discuss your concerns with them. Don't tell them. Okay, it's very different when you're discussing and when you're giving them instructions, because it's a two-way communication channel. Make sure that when you're talking to a teen, it is not a monologue, it's a dialogue. Okay, it's not what mommy says, it is what we say, and this is what we decide together. And once you have made that decision, again, monitor the amount of time spent. And for me, I would tell very honestly, I would give time frames as well. I noticed that you have spent, okay, you know, let's say 30 minutes on the computer, and I think that's a little too long because you have been on the computer the whole day. Okay, maybe what you can do, okay, is take a 5-minute break before you go back. Talk to them nicely. And sometimes it is also, you know, for them to know that you are also watching them. Okay, sometimes they don't realize that, hey, mommy and daddy are watching, you know, but something like that, they'll be like, oh, you mean you notice I've been on the computer the whole day? And share something like that. And most importantly, as a teen, please do know what they're doing on screen. Okay, because there are a lot of, I would say, information, that's one, but there are also a lot of vices on screen. So please be careful. As parents, you want to monitor. Again, at the end of the day, it's always setting a timer. So for your bigger child, for the younger child, a timer is very important. It doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to be one of those big visual stuff. I would tell you very honestly, we work with our Daiso timers. Okay, I set a 45-minute. Once it goes off, they are also off. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, okay. So with that, okay, we didn't have various. Oops, hold on. Okay, okay. So we didn't have variables that we you know, as I talked about this, there were certain variables that we didn't know of. So I'll share with you, which is important. And during a coaching session, this is what we will ask you. Okay, really, it will be the age group, the discipline and routine at home, which is very important. Again, what Tina has mentioned really is the relationship between the child and the parent. Okay, what are your family culture and values as well? And that is really, really important. Okay, and really comorbids with ADHD. So for example, does your child have executive functioning issue? For example, does your child have dyslexia? Because that is, really comorbids as well that we need to take into consideration as we coach you, in managing this particular, question. Okay, the other thing also is I'm assuming that there is a strong parent and child relationship. Therefore, you can have this open communication with your child. There are also firm family values by saying that, we do this together as family, we celebrate things together and so on and so forth. So therefore, as with all questions that we're going to attempt today, okay, I cannot highlight this enough. Every situation is unique and everything is unique between each family, parent and child. Therefore, what we're prescribing here or what solution that we're giving here, it does not fit everyone and all families. There are other considerations that we need to take into account. Okay, so with that, maybe we can take some questions.
Yeah, great job, Charlene. I've been asking for questions. No one has put any questions in the chat yet, but we did have many people submitting questions regarding gadget use, how to limit the child's time, whether I should just, cut off the Wi-Fi in the house and things like that.
Don't.
So those were your submissions to the registration. Yeah, but if any of you want to type any more current or, anything that Charlene hasn't covered in this short taster of 15 minutes, please put it in to the chat. Okay, we have one now from Carlson. Thanks. How do you monitor their use content-wise? Go ahead, Charlene.
I would actually open up and check their browser. Okay, in their history, I actually do that. Okay, I would go with a trust approach. Okay, however, for whatever reason, if you are being suspicious, let's say, for example, okay, let's say right now for teenagers, okay, the biggest no-no is pornography, right? Everybody is so afraid of that. And if for whatever reason you think that your child is looking into it, check their browser and check their history. Okay, and then what is important is for you to have, again, that open communication with your child. Please, when you do find out things that are negative and you need to take a conversation with your child, please be careful because they will feel a certain element of betrayal. Okay, because you've checked up on them. Okay, the other way also is to open, okay, so for me, I would say that for my child, I trust my son a lot. So if I were to suspect something, I will not check his browser, neither will I, check his phone. In fact, I will approach it head on by telling him that, hey, mommy and daddy have realized that you have had some behavioral changes lately, and I would like to find out what, caused this behavioral change. So although you suspect at the back of your mind, right, you are not answering it for him. You're allowing him to come forward to tell the truth, to be open and truthful. So if he says, oh, okay, I've been, watching pornography lately and it's quite addictive and, whatever, then it becomes a question of, okay, let's talk about this. And let's address why you're doing it and why you shouldn't be doing it. And if you do need extra help, this is what we will have to do. Okay, so we approach it that way. Again, like I say, it really depends on the relationship between, mother and child or parent and child. If you are really, the kind of parent to say, I say this and you do this, okay, I would tell very honestly, it doesn't work with our teens nowadays. Okay, in fact, they will become more rebellious. So take the softer approach. Take the approach that they are more important than you and you are very concerned about them. I would say 9 out of 10 times this works for the team. Okay, so hopefully that addresses your concern.
Sure. Just add in quickly, there's a few questions as you were talking. I think it's true that some of us forget to check on our children, right? And then we think that, oh no, right, 1 month has gone by, I didn't check on them. But I think the important thing, like Charlene said, is the relationship, and to keep on observing your child, spending time with them, because there will be some telltale signs. Yeah. Unfortunately, the world is a very nasty place. So it's not just about your child going to Google about such things. The vice is looking for them. Okay, they're predators. They're called predators because they are looking for prey, right? We have to be very, very open to understand that, because then we will not jump into scolding our children as well when we catch them with such things, because they are being enticed by systems and addictive kind of setups, right? That know their weaknesses. So we need to be not just protective, but we also need to explain to them that it's okay if you chance upon these things. It's okay, you're actually looking and you actually feel stimulated, you feel excited, but it's not helpful for you, it's not healthy. Let's find a way to make sure you don't keep getting into this, because usually when they are younger, or at any age actually, the construct of shame is very, very real. So you will already see them exhibiting some sense of shame. They may start to feel very depressed, they may feel very lousy, they may say very negative things about themselves, or in quietness, they will go and hide in the toilets a lot, bring their gadgets inside and give some funny excuse like, their class is still happening, but they really need to bring they have a project work and they really have to go toilet, and they will hide. Okay, so hiding is an indication also that they may be something. So always keep the communication open and gentle, right? You're not trying to police them. You're trying to keep them safe from who wants to attack them. Yeah. So I think that kind of approach and mindset will help you to approach them more gently, and that's what our children need from us when they are possibly starting to entertain or watch some of these things online. Okay, there was a question Moonlake put there regarding ODD. Okay, if you have a child who has ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, and whatever you tell them, whatever you sometimes even negotiate, they will do the opposite. Okay, my son, when he was diagnosed with ADHD, on the scale within his ADHD diagnosis, the oppositional factor was very high. So he just tends to twist everything. Whatever you say, he will just, in his mind, twist it opposite. Okay, so it was quite difficult. Just to give a proviso, we're focusing a lot on ADHD, but there's a lot of comorbidities with other things. But ODD is one of the most tricky ones, okay? So it is something we cannot take lightly, and I'll give you some advice, but please don't just take it wholesale as the only thing to do. What I did for my child was literally address the opposition by head on, meaning I would say, when I say this thing, you would often say the opposite, but it doesn't help you, right? Because you are then not processing what I just said to you. And then you give me with these wide eyes like, okay, your point, and then so slowly from a child, like primary school onwards, and it helped that I had a little spy. Like his older brother is just barely 2 years older than him. So when I say something, I can't hear his reply, but his brother, who is very near his age and the size, right, would come back and tell me what the brother had just said. So I could understand that it was not even just a defiant, talk back to me, but he said it quietly to himself. Anything I said, like, for example, I would say, please finish up your vegetables, for example. Then he will murmur to himself quietly, I don't need to eat my vegetables. I'm not going to eat my vegetables, like that. Like it's in his mind, right? But he verbalized it, unfortunately for him. So his policeman big brother would tell me, and these were when they were children. Okay, so when you understand it, address it as much as you can head on, but you also do know then you cannot do aggression head on. That's not what I mean. It means that you need to say, hey, when I say this, you are doing the opposite. This cannot happen, right? This is not acceptable because it's for your safety, it's for your guidance. You are still under my roof and my protection. What can we do about it? And you need to find ways that they are in agreement with you, yeah, and work it out bit by bit. There's also another question from another one, a mom who sent it to me privately regarding a similar situation, may not be ODD, but she's saying that no matter how much you agree, he never keeps to it. Okay, then there's always a shouting match after that, there's arguments, and then you end up having to snatch away the gadget. It's very, very common. Yeah, so we would need to go back again to the arrangement, go back to understanding the consequences. Oftentimes, it's true that when they are not able to cut off from one activity to the next. Okay, so transiting from one task to the next is something very poor for ADHD children. So find a way to address that even before the thing happens. Yeah. And there's no point fighting them at that moment, but take whatever happens at that moment to use for the next time. Okay, so what an example I can give you is when my child used exactly this thing, right? I'll say, okay, half an hour and the bell rings, right? And then, oh, it's 10 minutes more, and this is primary school, and how many more minutes, and then still there, right? Then he'll come out also in a half because he's grouchy that he didn't get whatever time he wanted. And then I'll tell him, I said, if you come out from a time that I mean for you to enjoy with such disrespect and grumpiness, then you're only telling me that this activity is not helpful for you. Correct? And then he gets this shocked face again. I'll tell you, when you say appropriate things that are actually the truth, rather than just nagging, you will get a very shocked face, but also a very clueless, like, oh my, I don't know how I got here. Kind of thing. Okay. Yeah, Charlene. Yeah. So address it. Then you're saying, so you're actually discouraging me from giving you more time. So maybe tomorrow or every time we have to rush out, okay, from this thing, there's a rush, like he has to finish so that we can go tuition or something like that, or he has a class online, go swimming, whatever. I think we shouldn't have any time anymore. And you see, when you build it up this way, they have no argument, and then you tell yourself, you're not even going to give it to them in such a situation anymore. Yeah. So that's something that you can build up. Yeah. Of course, as Charlene mentioned, this is only a taster, right? So we're giving you some tips, but your child's case is very unique. So definitely we don't know all the variables. So please don't just apply wholesale, and if it doesn't work, just chuck it out the window. Have a chat with us. Okay. Yeah, back to you, Charlene, if you want to wrap up this segment.
Yeah, so I would say really what is important is to talk about consequences straight up. So that when that happens, because we're already painting all the different scenarios, right? We're already perceiving what is going to happen, and we already painted all that, and we already, made sure that, we have touched base with everything that we think could go wrong, right? And bring it back to that, okay? I mean, at the end of the day, really, it's like, okay, so, we discussed about this, but, you didn't meet, your end of the bargain. And we discussed that this is going to happen. It wasn't something that we didn't talk about. So I hope you understand, okay? With growing up comes with responsibility. Okay, so I think every time I say that to a growing child, okay, their eyes pop out because they want to grow up. All of them want to grow up, but they don't realize that growing up comes with responsibility. And this is part of that responsibility, okay? Yeah, it doesn't mean that, okay, if it is a parent, I will always affirm them. It doesn't mean that I love you any less for doing this, but it's because I love you, and that is why I need to do this. And most times they will back down. Most times, even my boy will end up breaking down, crying like, oh, okay, I got it. She's got me. Okay, so I will do. So they will know how to be better the next time. And it's okay, really, right? Yeah, so that's all I have. I think there are some other questions.
Yes, okay, yes, there's so many questions. Yeah, I'm sorry we can't get to them. Yeah.
I think some of the questions I will address later because it falls in question 3 and some in question 2 as well. So maybe what we'll do is we'll move on first and then we'll come back to those questions.
Yeah, excellent, great. Okay, we're going into the next segment, which is another question that came up quite a bit. And I've plucked out 2 questions that are really suitable for us to go through. And I'll give you a taster of the kind of things we need to think through as we're considering these 2 main questions, okay? Diagnosis and medication, right? So this is an actual question, word for word, that came in our registration. We have yet to let our 11-year-old son go through formal assessment for ADHD, as we are not sure if we should have that label tied to him, okay? Would formal assessment help in managing him? We had him undergo OT and EF therapy, but the therapists say they are sure that he is not ADHD, okay, which makes it even more frustrating as to why he is not following instructions. Okay, this is our first question. There's a related question. The next one is this. Okay, oops, I already scrolled it. Thank you. How do you differentiate if a child needs more medication or better strategies, discipline, attitude, motivation, right? When he couldn't do what he's supposed to do in time. Okay, so these are two real questions that were actually submitted during the registration. Thanks to the parents who submitted this. As I run through the next few slides, bringing you through the framework of how to consider the answers towards this, I'll invite the two, if your question has been chosen, that you can unmute yourself to add on at any time if you want to give me a bit more information or ask a more specific question. Okay, and I don't mind chucking the slides to actually answer you and give you a taster of what an answer can be if it's more specific. Okay. All right, so the next slide. What are your key considerations for wanting a diagnosis in the first place? Okay, you need to ask yourself, what is the usefulness of knowing, right? You know or you don't know, so how? Okay, so you ask yourself, what would you do if you did know? Okay, and what would you do if you knew that it was not ADHD? So these are very important. They are very basic questions, but it's actually very important for us to sort through before and as we are going through this whole process of figuring out what are the issues with our children. Okay, and also after you know, what next? How is it going to adjust your parenting style? How is it going to affect your decisions with regards to him, etc., etc. Okay, so this is very important because many of us think that once you have a diagnosis, it's going to solve everything. Yeah. However, we're actually not that prepared for the diagnosis. So when the diagnosis comes, whether it's a yes or no, we fight it all the time. If it's no, we keep thinking, but it cannot be a no. I'm sure it is a yes. Okay. Then when it's a yes, you will think, but he's not that bad actually. How come he got a yes? And then so-and-so's child didn't get a yes, but look at him, he's even worse than my son, for example. Okay. So we really need to understand what are the considerations. Of course, like the question asked, the parent who asked, you are very concerned about the label. For sure, that's something all parents need to consider. However, let me assure you, okay, in being in the field and supporting parents for quite a number of years and engaging with some of the healthcare professionals involved with this whole scene, even from MOE and various parties, Child Guidance Clinic, IMH and stuff. What I'm getting from them is the respect for the diagnosis is very high, okay? Because when you have a diagnosis, you can access resources. So there is really very little fear that a label is going to be an issue, okay? It is a contrary effect now, let me tell you on the side. They are very aware that parents are afraid of the label. So actually, they are actually giving the diagnosis less. They're holding back giving 100% of those who are ADHD the diagnosis because they are also afraid that parents are afraid of the label. So we really need to change the culture and community mindset regarding this because it is actually quite dangerous. Okay, but let me move to the next slide and I will explain a little bit more why. When you know what the condition is, there is a clarity that opens up in your mind, right? Then your clarity also comes in the choices of your interventions. Okay, for example, if you know it's ADHD, then there is a clarity of choice when you are thinking, okay, he's struggling in his class, he's not listening, right? He's unable to focus, can't even do his homework when he comes home. Then it gives you clarity in choice when you are thinking about how to support him in his academic work. Do you then choose a group class tuition again of 12 or 15 people and you think, yeah, this teacher very good, very good. But if your child cannot learn in a big group context in school, do you think he's going to learn in a big group context in a tuition center? Yeah, no matter how good the tuition teacher is. So you need to ask yourself some of these questions. So the clarity of the condition gives you clarity in choice of your interventions. Okay, of course, I just gave you one example only. At the same time, when you know the condition, you also have a clarity of the origin of the symptoms, right? That means the symptoms are not, so this goes to the second question, right? One parent said, how do you know it's not attitude issues, right? Them not trying hard enough, motivation issues, right? Things like that, right? Or even not enough dosage of medication. Okay, so if you know that this is an ADHD problem, find out about ADHD, understand ADHD, and know how does ADHD originate, or how do the symptoms arrive in your child. Okay, it is nothing to do with attitude. It's nothing to do with them not trying hard enough. It's not them being lazy. Okay, so when you have clarity of the origin of symptoms, it gives you a better understanding of the root causes of the behavior, and therefore then guides your choices of interventions, how you speak to them, even your assumptions and your tone of voice when you are telling them off even, or talking and discussing with them about areas where they are struggling. All this would be very clear because you realize that, hey, ADHD is not an intentional thing. It is not, I'm intentionally ADHD. Today I want to be ADHD. I'm just very lazy, but I got my label this ADHD. It's not like that. Okay, ADHD is an actual condition. Yeah, there's a lot of misconception about it in the whole field, even with professionals. Because it is so behavior related, a lot of people see it as just an excuse for naughty behavior. Okay, but it is not so. We can't go into all the reasons and the origins now, but when read it up, it's in all the literature out there, and understand that then the origin is a neurodevelopmental issue. That means it's from their brain. It is not intentional. All right, and then you have clarity of the child's behavior. Okay, and when you have this clarity, it actually leads to better parent-child communication. Yeah, because your parental management of them is going to be adjusted, and it should be. Okay, so again, back to the very question I asked you in the beginning. What will you do if you knew? So now that you know that he's ADHD, for those of you who get a diagnosis, or when you receive a diagnosis, it should change the way you are managing them. The way you are parenting them should definitely change, because the reason why you're frustrated, the reason why you're finding that, hey, things are not lining up, it's just not like, he's not like your previous child. You say only, he will do it. This one you say 10 times, almost 1,000 times, nothing's happening. Yeah, still do the same old thing. Then you need to ask yourself, hey, it must be the way I'm speaking or the way I'm approaching it has to be, have to make some change, in order for me to see changes also in my son or my daughter. Okay, so this mental framework is very, very important for us to think through and to understand when it comes to the diagnosis, right? And then let me go to the next one, which is key considerations for medication. After you have already gotten the diagnosis, then oftentimes the first question that will be thrown to you is, will you be willing to let your child take medication? Right? And I know that this is a very controversial topic for many parents. Every one of us has to deal with it with our own values, our own understanding. So let's be open here as we talk about it. Okay, give you a framework how to approach this whole area. Before you decide on medication, what are the things that you need to think through? Yeah, you need to ask yourself, what are you expecting to see? Because on one hand, you also have parents who are very eager for medication because they have heard that it's so good and they heard that that's the thing for ADHD. So they're actually very, very excited and very eager to apply it to their children. All right. However, it is because we are too eager sometimes, it is our expectations that may actually cause a lot of pressure for our children, and even for them to perform in a certain way, because we think that the medication is going to suddenly do miracles and transform them to be everything that we see issues are all going to disappear. It is not like that, right? So please be very clear what the medication is actually going to achieve and how will that be exhibited in your child, right? And this is where getting very appropriate advice from the psychiatrists and psychologists is very important. You often have very little time with them. And I know I too have had rather not so supportive experience with some psychiatrists that may just either say yes or no to you regarding medication with a very dismissive answer, and then we as non-professionals just have to accept it as a verdict on our child. But coming for such sessions, reading up about it and understanding is going to help you to know what kind of questions to be very specific to ask your psychiatrist, all right, in terms of attention, focus, behavior, side effects, things like that, all right? And no question should be ignored, okay? Because you are paying, even if it's subsidized or whether it's private, all the more, you are paying for a professional service. If the person's not giving you a good supportive answer, there's someone else that you can see. Okay, so please go and look for someone else who can give you a better support for your family in going through this. Okay? So medication also needs to be considered in a package together with other interventions. It's not the only thing, it's not your magic bullet that is going to solve every single thing. You need to think about what other sources of support, what other kinds of therapy or interventions that your child might do well with. And let me tell you, a lot of it requires the home support and the parent support as one of the chief support structures. Okay, because you can send them for social skills training, for example, you can send them for even for EF training, but it is how they are supported on the everyday that is going to make a lot more difference than just sending them out for external things. Okay, so just to let you understand that a multimodal approach for intervention is very important, and medication is a key mode that has been found to be very evidence-based. It's also shown evidence-wise it's actually not addictive. Yeah, and evidence has shown that actually giving appropriate ADHD medication lowers the risk of the ADHD person in adulthood or even young youth accessing other kinds of addictive substances. Okay, I'm talking about drugs and stuff like that. Okay, I think I've done on this slide, have I? Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. So after you have decided, one of the important things to do is to request from the psychiatrist, right, a medicine feedback and response chart. Okay, let me give you an example. It may be a bit small, but I always end up clicking twice. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, Yuan, you can move it for me. Yeah. Okay. So this is stimulant medication trial. Okay, and then this one's a handwritten one. I know it's too tiny for you to see unless you blow your screen really, really big, but it is just to tell you that medical professionals out there should have something like this. Please ask for it. Otherwise, you can create something based on your conversations with them as well. Yeah, things that can be on it. You can bring us back to the after the slide before. Thanks. The idea is to log the kinds of responses that your child has to the medication, when they take it, what time they take it, and then how any symptoms that you observe. Okay, so it could be that your child, loses appetite, yeah, but it may only last for 3-4 days, yeah, or it may be your child, has a low slump after, a certain number of hours after the medication wears off. So you want to chart all these things carefully so that you have a more standardized, rather a concrete baseline to go bring back to your professional, your psychiatrist, to check in with them. Okay, because medicine is not so straightforward. It's not like just giving a Panadol and then checking when the fever comes down, within 4 hours or 6 hours and things like that. Yeah, I've heard from is he called Gary Thomas? He says that medication is so interesting, ADHD medication. It is nothing to do with body weight and age, because sometimes an adult may be taking a really tiny dose and it works for them, whereas a child may actually end up taking a higher dose for it to have any effect. So it really depends on the individual person's body, how sensitive they are to that particular medicine or that stimulant. Yeah. So requesting from the psychiatrist and have a look. Dan Shapiro, he's a developmental pediatrician. He has a free downloadable medicine log on his website, so you can go and take a look at that, or just Google for it, and I'm sure there are people who have posted some examples as well. Unfortunately, in Singapore, not all psychiatrists use it, but if you start to ask it, I'm sure they will start to produce their own, okay, and help you along with it. Yeah. The idea is you want to check how your child is responding, okay, and keep communications open with your child. It is not easy for them, just like Charlene said in the video. Those of you who were here right in the beginning, she actually was, her story was captured in the Unlocking ADHD introduction launch video. It will be sent to you in an email later on, or it's also at the end of the feedback form. So please make sure you watch it if you came in a bit later just now. She mentioned how her son said, which mother gives the children drugs, right? So even if you have reservations, if not, what more your own child? And if they are a teenager as well, to have to take it when they are in school, because the hours are much longer. They often have to take a second dose by lunchtime. It's not easy for them to face the pressure and that sense of self-consciousness, right, of taking something outside. So you want to journey with them and discuss with them. And as I've done also with my son, who's now 17 years old, and my story is a long story, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. If I see you for coaching, I'll tell you more. The idea is we actually never tried until now. So I think now he's only like in 2 months into trying his medication, okay, for various reasons. But the idea is you and the child is in control and contributing to the decision about whether or not they want to continue with medication. Okay, no matter how young your child is, don't let it be a forced thing, because then they will be very resentful to you, and they many times have very sensitive physiologies as well. They have sensorial processing issues as well, and you want to acknowledge that. They may not be able to articulate when they are a child how it makes them feel, but it just makes them feel yucky. So please relay this back to the psychiatrist. Really try to pursue what can be done, maybe a change in the type of medication, or taking a pause and leaving it to maybe when they're a bit older and they're better able to manage the whole management of medication. Okay, so you are always in the driver's seat. At any time, even if you take all the prescription home, you can stop it too. So this just to assure you that it doesn't mean once you go into the medication route, it is forever for life. But you need to know if it helps your child, yes, by all means, this is something that is accessible and a very legitimate form of intervention. Okay, let's go into a time of Q&A with regards to this question now.
Yeah, I think there were some questions about Concerta and whether there were side effects. Okay, so for Concerta, it will only be dispensed by your psychiatrist, right? So you will need to work closely with your psychiatrist, because your child's blood pressure will need to be taken each time it's dispensed, okay, to check and to ensure that the blood pressure doesn't rise, okay, or gets too high. The other side effect for Concerta really is appetite, yeah, and weight loss. So really, these two would be what they're monitoring, and the other one really would be sleep. So please monitor sleep as well, because these are all side effects of Concerta, and not just Concerta, it's any ADHD stimulant. Yeah, so this is something that you really have to watch out for. I would say that I also have another question, or I saw another question about taking the medication during holidays. Now, I would say you would need to work with your psychiatrist on this, because, we are always very concerned about, addiction. And for my son, I will tell you very honestly, he is in control of taking his medication. So there are days where he feels that, okay, I don't have a lot of classes today, I don't need that much focus, he doesn't take the medication. Over the weekends and holidays, he doesn't take it as well. So again, this was, done in consultation with our psychiatrist. So I would say, if in doubt, please consult your psychiatrist. They would know the best how to, really advise you in terms of medication. Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure whether I missed any other questions.
There was a question directly to me with regards to how the diagnosis is actually made. We take the whole diagnosis is listed under the DSM-5, right, under mental health conditions. So it has to be done by a professional, and you have to actually the child has to exhibit 6 out of 9 symptoms within each category of the ADHD symptoms, okay? Impulsivity, inattentiveness, and hyperactivity. Those are the 3 main ones. Of course, there are a few other ones that are underlying, but these are the 3 main ones, okay? And it has, all the symptoms have to be pervasive. Pervasive means across different contexts, okay? In the home, in the school, in different environments, okay? That's pervasive across contexts. It has to be persistent. It has to be persistent over the lifespan, meaning it shouldn't be suddenly at primary 6, then he suddenly exhibits some of these issues, okay? When before that he was very attentive, very focused. Then there could be some other biological or physiological or even a psychological stress that he may be going through that is not necessarily ADHD. Then there's a third thing. It needs to impair their behavior, their well-being. Okay, it has to be impairing, meaning it's affecting their grades, maybe it's impairing their classroom behavior, they are not able to sit still, they're not able to focus, right? So impairment is actually key also for diagnosis. That's why it's a bit tricky, because those who have a milder form of ADHD and the impairment is not as visibly seen in terms of, say, failing grades or whatever, they tend to sometimes get missed out in getting the diagnosis, because the psychologists and even the parents may, after doing the whole survey, it may indicate that the child is actually not impaired, so to speak. Okay. However, they may not be reaching their potential. So that's the part that is a little bit tricky. Okay.
Maybe just to add on as well, I would say the assessment actually will also be done by your child's teachers and those around him. So they will involve the teachers, they will involve mom and dad, and of course the child as well also has to do his or her own assessment. So it involves actually a holistic view as compared to only, one view, which is maybe the parental view or maybe the child's view. So they will definitely involve the teachers, at least 2 teachers from the school. Yeah. So hopefully that addresses your question.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much for the questions regarding medication. Sorry, we can't go to every single one again, but I need Charlene to move on to the last segment, because that's also going to address quite a bit of your earlier questions regarding gadget use. Yep, so go ahead, Charlene.
Okay, so I think a lot of questions that were asked actually would be in, well, I would say general categories, okay, which fall under executive functioning. Okay, so these questions would be, well, first one, how do I get my child to focus as she's easily distracted? So we're talking about sustained attention, which is really a EF function. Okay, the other would be, my child tells me that homework is completed, but the child is constantly, while the teacher is constantly calling me to inform me that this has not been done and it's not been submitted. So this is related to do with planning and organization, which is again the same as how do I motivate my child to be a self-starter. So again, we have to be realistic here as well. Okay, and the other really would be my child has anger management and behavior issues. Okay, and this has to do with emotional control and emotional regulation, which again falls under EF function. So question really would then be, understanding the ADHD child. So what do they struggle with really? Okay, the truth is a high percentage. I do believe that, the magazine Attitude actually says up to 90% of children with ADHD actually struggle with executive functioning skills. Okay, and this is actually very real. And in fact, you can have executive functioning deficiency or, challenges even without having an ADHD diagnosis. So this is actually quite real. Okay, so having said that, what are these really? Okay, so we're talking about sustained attention, we're talking about planning and organization, emotional control, working memory, okay, response inhibition, task initiation, time management, okay, multitasking, and problem solving. So basically, if you look at all this, it really impacts a child when they are in school. Okay, especially at the younger level. And what happens when we as parents are journeying with our child, we have to come in then to support them in this area. Okay, like what Tina has said earlier on, we cannot expect, the child to have, to grow up naturally, on autopilot. And especially if you have an ADHD child, that unfortunately doesn't happen. And we really do have to then be realistic about it. Okay, hold on. I think some of my slides actually ran. Just give me a moment. Okay, sustained attention. Yes, thanks, Rian. I know you're operating it behind there. Okay, getting attention. Now, very importantly, I would say that, sometimes I'm not sure whether you have experienced it, but when you call out to your child, okay, and you're belting out instructions to your child, and the next thing they go is, yeah, okay, mom, and then that's it. It just stops there, right? And really it's because they heard you, but it's not registered, right? So they really heard you without hearing you. Okay, and this happens very often for ADHD child. So what you really need to do is go grab their attention. Okay, what I do to my children is that I will actually go up to them and say, okay, mommy needs you to do this, and this. Maximum 3 instructions, nothing more than that. Really, because if you give them more instructions than that, okay, they're not going to follow through, and they will have forgotten your 3rd instruction or your 1st instruction by the time you got to the 3rd instruction. So again, it is give them clear instructions before each task. Now, I remember when my son was first diagnosed, I fell into this trap. Okay, and what I did was I gave him 1 instruction. Before he finished the instruction, I gave him the 2nd and 3rd. Okay, and then he started struggling with the 1st. Why? Because he started to get confused already, right? So then he stomped out in frustration. And after he calmed down, he came back and he said, Mom, can you just give me 1 clear instruction because it confused me? And I have no idea what you're asking me. Okay, and this really happens. Okay, and this is actually very real to them because their thought processes are already interrupted. Okay, so try to give it as clear as possible. And as much as possible, okay, have them repeat what you've asked back to you so that you ensure that they understood what you're saying. Okay, and the truth is my daughter is absolutely guilty of this. Okay, I would tell her do A, she will end up doing B. And when I said, why do you do that? And she goes, but that was what you said. Okay, so what happens is that she didn't understand my instructions in terms of processing it, right? So have them repeat it back to you. Chances are when they repeat it back to you, you're lowering frustration for yourself as well because you are correcting how they understand what you have said. And the truth is, remember, yeah, for ADHD children, they understand things differently from us. They understand it in their way, and you have to have them repeat it back to you so that you understand their world. You want to walk into their world, okay? Because it's really about them and us supporting them, okay? The next thing really is sometimes getting them, okay, this is to do also with task initiation, okay? It is difficult to get a child, okay, don't say a child. Let's say for yourself, is it easy or difficult for you to get started on something that you don't like? Okay, I'm not sure about you, but it's very difficult for me. Okay, so what do I do, or what do we do for the child? Get them to start on a task that they're more interested in. Okay, so for example, okay, it'll be more like, okay, my son loves to cook. So for example, I would say that, okay, you know, let's talk about this recipe. So then you get him interested, right? After this recipe, okay, can you finish your homework first? Then we'll cook together. So then, you know, it's like, okay, he knows that I've gotten him interested. So you're enticing him. And then after that, getting him to do what he needs to do, okay, before you get him to do the activity that he really wants. Okay, so again, it's really breaking down the bigger tasks. Okay, and the truth is ADHDers get overwhelmed with tasks. To them, they see the big picture. They don't see the small things that make up the big picture. It's only the big thing. And when they see the big thing, they get overwhelmed. So therefore, what do? Procrastinate. I don't want to do it, right? So we've helped to break it down into small bite-sized pieces so that it's easier and manageable for them to do. And then the most important thing really is, you know that they have sustained attention issues already. Break up the length of time that they have to do something. For example, if homework is going to cost, or they're going to spend, you know, an hour doing homework, okay, what we can do really is to break up that task to say that, okay, let's do 20 minutes of homework. We will stop for 5 minutes and we'll do something else. We'll take a walk in the garden. And then after that, we'll come back and finish the homework in the next 20 minutes and so on and so forth. So you can have it in blocks of time until they finish their homework. Okay, but that is important so that it helps them manage that and helps them to take control and not get overwhelmed. Because if you give them a big block, what is going to happen really is they're going to give up and say, it's too difficult for me, I don't want to do it. And then that's it, you're going to build resistance as well. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Okay, so again, I did mention the feeling of overwhelm. It is something that is actually very normal for ADHD children. Okay, and therefore, really it is to help them break this task down. And how can we support them, especially in terms of homework, like what you asked. Okay, in terms of homework, really is self-checking in. I'm not sure whether every school has this, but I know that for my son and for my daughter, they have a planner, and the school issues them a planner. Okay, and in the planner, they should be writing down their homework. Okay, what is required for, to hand up the next day, and when are the various due dates and so on for homework. Now, if the teacher is giving out actually individual sheets of paper and so on and so forth, have them have a folder, okay? A folder with different dividers, okay, for different subjects, and one folder for homework, one folder for completed work to be handed out. And they have to physically go through this process, okay? And to do that as well, to help them double check really is to have a buddy system, okay? When the diagnosis comes in for your child, okay, the first thing you do is actually you bring it back to the school, you give it to the form teacher so that the form teacher, makes the arrangement with the AEDs and so on and so forth. So the allied educators actually will come in and will help your child to be more organized. They also will then work with their teachers, okay, your child's teachers, okay, to make sure that certain things are in place. For example, if your child's ADD, they may need a prompter, they may need to sit away, from, distraction, and most of the time under the teacher's nose, okay? And arrangements will be done like this. And therefore, the next arrangement, which is very important, which I always advocate, is please ask the teacher to have a buddy for your child, okay, especially in terms of homework. And normally this buddy, I'll tell you, is somebody that is very meticulous, okay, and really, they'll be the first person to submit homework type person, okay? So have that buddy check in the work or the homework script that is done by your child, especially the entering in the planner. And what is most important at home, okay, unfortunately, as a ADHD parent, we have to check. Okay, we cannot allow our children to say that, okay, I've got no homework today. And then the homework piles up. Okay, and by the time you find out at the end of the month, it's like, wow, too much. And then you're just wondering whether the cane should come out or not at that point in time, right? Okay, so really at the end of the day, do check in with them. Now, I, for one, always have a routine for my child. After lunch, okay, the first thing she does is she sits down and she opens up her bag and makes sure that all the homework is completed, okay? Initially, there were some fights, but now it runs on clockwork, which means that I don't even need to monitor her anymore, okay? So she's now P5, she's already, doing this on clockwork. I don't have to, even scream and shout at her. All I need to do is homework done? Okay, it will be handed out tomorrow. Please remember to put it in your bag. So this is something that she always forgets, okay? And it's actually quite, it's quite common actually for ADHD kids or kids with executive functioning, because they forget. They do something, they already happy, finish already, so then they forget to pack it in, okay? And then again, a very important thing is you need to allocate a specific area, okay? They don't go back and do work in, on the dining table and after that in their room or whatever. You specify an area so that they know that that's where they have to complete their work. They know that all the essentials are there so that you do not want them running around, okay? So what happens is that they will always try to get off their chair to say, oh, I want water, I want this, I want that. Make sure everything is there. Make sure they're away from distractions and make sure that, clutter is minimized. Why? Because they will start digging, they'll be distracted, right, when there's clutter. So yeah, that is important, okay? I don't know who's in control here. Okay, yeah, okay, no, before strategies. No. Okay, wait, okay. Okay, one more slide before this. Sorry, we're all losing control of this here. Okay, I think I missed this slide earlier on. So this is what I was talking about in terms of breaking down time. Okay, so if you've got time, because I'm not going to cover this now because I'm running out of time, but do look up the Pomodoro technique. It is a very common technique used, especially in terms of increasing productivity as well. So you can even use it for yourself, okay? Okay, now, okay, in terms of planning and control, okay, planning and control, like I did say earlier on, when they write down their homework, right, okay, sometimes it's very blind to them because everything's in the same color. So what you may want to do is actually encourage using different color codes. And I do that all the time, okay, so that they know straight away when they see the visual, okay, I've got math homework, I've got English homework, I've got, you know, whatever. And I cannot advocate enough having a routine for your child. And especially, you know, in terms of activities as well. Make sure that they have sufficient sleep, sufficient exercise, sufficient family time, and meal times. Okay, for us at home, meal times is the only time that we get to communicate with our kids. So that really is important for us. Also, when you're doing the routine, please make sure that you have scheduled homework time and revision time. Very often we forget revision time, and that is actually important. Okay, and again, very important is to plan for breaks as well. Okay, to be very honest, kids will look forward to those breaks. Okay, so by rule of thumb, I would say for the younger child, every 20 minutes, give a 5-minute break. Okay, if they go for longer, 45 minutes, give a 10-minute to 15-minute break. Okay, so this helps to recharge them. And then the next thing, very, very important, is you need to commit to the plan. Most of the time, as parents, because it takes so much effort from us, right? We actually tend to lose the plan along the way. Never mind, they can do whatever they want, you know, after this is so tiring. Okay, but please, because once you've started, stick to the plan. Okay, it will start to be automatic after a while. Okay, like my daughter now really truly is very automatic. I don't even have to, you know, breathe down her neck for this. Maybe the occasional time when she's tired and she's slipped up, but you know, I think most of the time now, 90% she's on her own. Okay, so in terms of consistency, please stay consistent. Okay, as parents, okay, I'm not sure about you, but my husband sometimes gets very carried away, okay, especially when he's in a happy mood. Okay, everything also can. But when he's in a grouchy mood, everything also cannot. Okay, so then the poor child will look at me and go, Mommy, how come yesterday can, today cannot? I don't understand, right? So again, it's really about consistency, okay? So when it comes to that, I would then have to, you know, talk to the husband about it lah. Okay, so we again need to check each other. It's a tag team thing, okay? And most importantly is be present with your child. I cannot highlight this enough. So many times I see parents being with the child, but they're on their phones, you know, and stuff like that. Build that quality family time with your child, and especially the one-to-one time. If you've got multiple kids, put aside that one-to-one time with each child. Okay, because they will appreciate it. It's your connection time. And I know my kids look forward to that one-to-one time with me, even if it means, you know, just a 15-minute chit-chat with me about anything and everything that they want. So again, they lead it, not me. Okay. And then the next thing I think, which is, I do believe it's my second last slide, okay, really is about emotional control. And do remember that for the ADHD child, emotional control is something that is difficult for them. And therefore, they actually do look up to you as parents, as models, and also within the environment. So for example, if you are not a very calm parent and you're always shouting at your child, the child will always be shouting as well because he or she is modeling your behavior. However, if you are very calm and you approach a situation always with a level head, what happens is that your child is going to pick up that same thing. Okay, so it is also very important. And also within the environment between husband and wife, if you're always shouting at each other, what's going to happen? They're also going to pick it up because they get very irritated, they get frustrated with the situation. Okay, so therefore, please check your behavior as well. And if you need help in terms of, you know, regulating your own behavior, okay, do come and look for us because that is important as you bring yourself into the relationship. And remember that, you know, it is a journey. And most important really is identifying emotions. Now, most of us really at the end of the day, the first thing we always say is, I'm angry about the situation, right? However, anger could transcend to a lot of things. Anger could come out as frustration. Anger could come out as maybe embarrassment even. But if we don't identify these emotions and we break it down, everything is about anger. And that cannot be it, right? So we need to also help our children to regulate that while we regulate ourselves as well, okay? So then again, so we need to look at the situation. Remember at the end of the day, okay, that the situation is such that everything really is not about the child or about me, but really it's about the situation and how we can handle the situation. Okay? Okay, so with that, I think one thing that I want to end up with before we go off to questions really would be connect with your child through empathy. Okay, and I think that is really very important because as ADHD children, they get very emotional and they get worse when people misunderstand them, okay, and they get super frustrated. So as parents, what we need to do is to slow down, take a step back and reconnect with your child and find out from your child's perspective what really has happened. And I think that connection would really be, you know, the turning point for a lot of parent-child relationships. Okay, so with that, maybe I would like to invite some questions, you know, before we end off. And while we're inviting all of you to send in your questions, there is also a feedback form that we'd like you to complete, and that is really in the chat box. So please help us to complete this form so that we can help to improve the next sessions moving forward. Okay. Okay, so with that, some questions.
Yeah, some questions in the chat, but some of them are already being answered. Thank you by our founder Moon Lake and myself as well. So if there's any of you, we do want to keep the time. So there's actually only like 2 minutes left, and we will still overrun a little bit with the last announcement and feedback form. So if anyone wants to actually unmute yourself and ask, it's probably much faster to make sure we answer you, because unfortunately we haven't managed to get to every single question, and we apologize for that. But it's really good to see you're thinking about things and trying to keep up with this whole strategizing. Yeah, and that's what coaching will help you to do, because it is not meant to tie you on like chiropractor or whatever for 10 sessions or 11 sessions or whatever. Sometimes if you are a fast learner, maybe one session you will be fine and it will set you up for at least a year or two, or even for the next few years in journeying with your child. Yeah, so it's not like you're going to pay private rate for like 10 times and then you're not going to be very, no money for that. So please make sure that you are supported as a parent. Yeah, because I wish someone could have journeyed with me through some of my frustrations. I think Charlene's the same too. And we really learn from our mistakes, learn from our experience and what we've gathered in the work that we do. So we're really happy to be able to translate some of these to you to really shorten the runway that you have to get on track and to actually do something more efficient and effective for your particular child, for your family, for yourself. Yeah.
Hi, Tina.
Yes.
I have a question. I actually have a private message for you, but since I'm given this opportunity, I will raise the question here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have this challenge with my son when he's primary 3, right? Where he start to deliberately annoy, not doing homework and this and that. So I sent him for school counseling, and after 2 years there's no improvement. So I spoke to the counselor about diagnosis, but she was strongly against diagnostic. So subsequently I also spoke to some of the teachers. There wasn't much concern except for the non-compliant in homework. So ultimately I went to the polyclinic route, right, to get him diagnosed. And then because he has been on school counseling, he was subsequently referred back to the REACH program. And finally, this time around, IMH sent an assistant, right, to find out the situation. We were given a set of questionnaire, and I was very apprehensive about the questionnaire because it purely has yes or no. There was no rating scale. And I remember there were a few questions we couldn't answer, and we asked, there is occurrence of such behavior, but it is rare. Do we then answer as a yes or no? But we were not answered. So subsequently, right, I was told that he has this borderline ADHD, but there was no further advice given by IMH or the school. All they told us was firm up the house discipline, or at worst, go on medication. So years later, at his PSLE year, the tutor felt that he's not able to focus. So I was worried about learning difficulties. I sent him for a private assessment on learning issues, as well as an attention deficit test. So this psychologist, right, told me that based on his assessment, the child does fidget a bit, but not excessive, and the child can bring himself back when he's lost his attention. So the clinical result came out, the report, right, is that he has borderline attention deficit, but non-clinical level. So in private conversation, the psychologist, right, told me that she doesn't see him as a ADHD child. I used the same report, I sent to IMH, and I start questioning, could there be a reassessment of the situation? Is he or is he not? And their reply is that they still think he is. There was no further assessment. So I'm now very confused. I have started my child when he's 9, he's now 13. All these years, right, there was no intervention. There isn't any referral for like individual behavior therapy, and life still goes on the way it is with the defiance and the non-compliance. So I'm very lost now.
Yeah, thanks for being so open to share your case, Jen. I think there would be many who might have a similar situation as you and who would benefit from hearing. Okay, your questions really brought us over time, but I don't want to leave you hanging. It is not easy for us to give you a very thorough answer, like within 2 or 3 minutes, that will be respectable to all that you have suffered from his 9 years old to 13 years old. Okay, so we really don't want to be dismissive in how we want to analyze or strategize for you. So please, if you don't mind, reach out to one of us after this to schedule an appointment. But I would want to let you know that a little bit of what I mentioned about diagnosis in advance, the system in Singapore focuses largely on avoiding labels as much as they can. Okay, in a way, it's driven also by the fear and paranoia that most parents have about labeling. So from my interactions and recently, because I'm sitting on Spark and we have private interactions with some of the higher ups, it's their focus is not on just giving a label. Okay, they assure us that even if the child doesn't have a label, they will get support, right? However, it's still slippery kind of thing, right? Because if you don't have a label, down the line, the teachers and all that are going to disregard the fact that he has any attention issues. And as you said, if his initial diagnosis wasn't very conclusive either, it came with the label that this is not a medical report, right? Then maybe the teachers will also not really focus that strongly on it. A lot of times, teachers are also looking at what they see, his exhibitions of his behavior in the classroom. So if he seems to be paying attention, he only just does now and then doesn't hand in homework. To them, that is not disruptive. It is not impairment. So they will not have the energy or the time to chase him up. Yeah, but as our founder Moon Lake shared in the video that started this whole thing, is we know that these children, when they have certain deficits, no matter in what level, it stops them from achieving their potential. They could be so much more if they were given the adequate support. Yeah, so I'm sorry your journey has been all over the place in a way, and you haven't had that clarity. But to assure you, there isn't very many options for interventions for ADHD, right? Oftentimes the diagnosis is given and that is supposed to somehow like help the parents already. Many times they assume that the parents will go and read up, or they will go and do this or that, or they assume that when you submit the diagnosis to the school's going to do things on their end as well. So there's a lot of assumptions. There's actually a lack of very specific interventions. So this is something that parents, you want to be aware as to what is available and what is not available, and then how to better support your child in the home context, in engaging the school, in the school context, and then maybe even in the private context in terms of external coaches or external therapy sessions that you can access for him. Yeah. Charlene, did you want to add anything on that?
I would say really that yeah, don't give up on your child, you know, at the end of the day, look at really connecting with him. And I think that is a good way to start, because when you talk about, you know, growing up years at 13 and so on, they are also trying to find who they are. And it's not just really about diagnosis as well sometimes. And the truth is they have to be reassessed anyways. Yeah. Like what I did share, my son was reassessed at Sec 3. Okay. And the findings were very different, you know, when we had our initial assessment when he was about 9-10 years old. So there is still hope, I would say. But if you really strongly feel that he needs, you know, that he has an attention deficit and he really needs help in that area, then I mean, at this point, I would recommend two things that really is work with him in terms of lengthening his attention, like what the strategies that I've given just now, right? Sit with him, help him lengthen those things. And the truth also is that computer doesn't help. In fact, by spending too much time on the computer and even on any gadget use, what happens is that it actually shortens our attention span, because things are happening so fast, right? And when we have to sit down and read a piece of work, what happens is that we actually start to clue out because there is no stimulation. Yeah, so you may want to consider doing that, but really at the end of the day is to have that open communication with your child. Yeah, I think that is really very important. With every ADHD child, having the parental belief and connection, I think, is the game changer.